Perhaps you think a cashless society is a pipe dream, something long in the making, a sci-fi fantasy that could never be induced, something that democracy could prevent, that we could bind together, band together and oppose. Well, it's already being piloted in Australia. And we know from the trucker protest that whilst digital currencies in their current form do provide alternative to centralized authoritative financial models, if we have a world currency controlled by governments, it will become a crucial component in a Chinese social credit score dystopia. Let's have a look at the pilot model that's already being implemented in Australia. And remember how Australia carried on during the pandemic.
Well, concerns are growing for senior citizens with more and more banks going cashless. Yes, banks going cashless. Over-the-counter transactions are no longer available at some Commonwealth Bank branches, with cash only available through ATMs. For more, we're joined by the Chief Operating Officer of National Seniors Australia, Chris Grice. Thanks so much for your time, Chris.
What I like about Chris is he's brought on to talk about cashless societies from the perspective of senior citizens in Australia, but he strays into all sorts of extraordinary territory. You would only get this on Australian news.
A cashless trend, what's going on?
Well, we're not only sort of seeing cash being sort of, I guess, removed from the economy, but we're seeing obviously a deliberate play to transition everybody over to digital transactions. 2030, they're removing cheques from circulation, so there's a big shift to getting people off cash. And also to get cash, they've got to pay for it as well. We're seeing more and more transaction fees being added onto their accounts if they want to access cash, in particular through ATMs that aren't necessarily provided by the big banks.
Does this remind you of the kind of behavioural nudging that took place during the pandemic? They're making it more difficult to get cash, they're charging you to access cash, and they're already eliminating cheques. These things look like incremental changes in order to create more convenience or more security, but it seems that there is an agenda being pursued that generates more profit, but more significantly forecloses on the possibility of transactions without centralised authority having the ability to intervene.
And I guess there's a lot of work that needs to happen in terms of educating and informing senior Australians in terms of being able to operate with, using their smartphones and these apps. And there's even risks around that. I mean, the organisation you're talking about that's sort of making this change, they had an outage on their app which basically lasted a day.
Presumably what's being described there is a legitimate outage that happened for technical reasons, but the simple fact is that during that 24 hours no one had access to currency. So in a society where there is no cash, there is no alternative, you could suddenly find yourself with no access to cash, no ability to alternatively transact or trade, and potentially these outages could happen at will, at whim, to individuals or whole sectors of society. Don't you increasingly get the sense these days that ideas are piloted? What happens if you tell everybody just to stay in their homes? What happens to everybody if you just deny them access to cash? If you live in a society where crisis, scarcity and denial are advantageous to systems of authority and systems of power, financial systems of power, governmental systems of power, you could find that increasingly crises are used to manage a population. All centralised systems of authority are open, yes, to flaws and inadvertent accidents and outages, but also they're open to manipulation. They can easily become tools of social control, as this example demonstrates.
So folk who were using the app, it indicated zero balance, no money in their account, and they weren't able to access their money for an entire day, basically.
So suddenly you just look at your bank account, it says there's no money there. I mean, that's plausible. Don't you have that kind of fear anyway, that at any point your bank could just go, no, we've lost all of your money, it's gone. What these schemes present is the institutionalization of systems where it is possible that overnight your money could disappear. Your ability to trade, transact, and indeed eat could be taken away from you.
And so that forced people back into the branches and long queues to just get access to what's their money.
Post-pandemic, it seems that we're being introduced more and more to situations where we're invited to tolerate more intervention and more control, more crisis. The whole goal of civilization has always been comfort, convenience, safety. Pay your taxes, we'll look after you, and look at all of the abundant products you have access to. Once that model and that paradigm starts to shake and break down, I believe it's an opportunity and a necessity, in fact, to reevaluate the whole condition of our culture. Because what we're being told now is not that things are going to get increasingly better and more convenient. We're told you're going to live in smart cities where you can only travel within a 15-minute area. We're going to have currencies that can be switched off either by accident or at will. You're going to have passports that control your movement. All of these ideas are being subtly introduced simultaneous to surveillance and censorship. In essence, freedom is being reduced and minimized and sold to us as convenience. There's a few glitches in this brave new world, like you're starving to death in an endless queue trying to get your hands on your own money, staring at a zero in your bank account and a husk of old bread in your other hand.
Commonwealth Bank spokesperson has told Today the Commonwealth Bank has created a very small number of specialist centres in major metropolitan areas which are designed to support personal and business customers with more complex banking needs. Goes on to say all of our specialist centres are in major metropolitan locations and very nearby to full-service franchises.
Do you see how they're subtly reframing the concept of what a bank is? This is a specialist centre. It's not a specialist centre. I gave you my money. Can I have it back, please? No, you'll have to go to the specialist centre and have a very special conversation. Here's a special conversation. Give me my fucking money back. Do you see how they're subtly reorganising and redefining what our relationship is with institutions that used to be regarded as a service? Suddenly you have banks that can switch off your money or don't want to look after your account for spurious and unusual reasons. They have the ability to shut down your ability to trade, and it's all described to you as a service. I'm beginning to think that there are crises that are used as opportunities to induce change, technology that is sold to you as convenient that actually offers centralised authority the ability to control, and it's all masked in bureaucratic, easy language. You have to stay very present and aware, I think, to notice what's actually happening down at the old specialist banking centre.
Their full statement is on our website, Carl.
Don't worry, there's just no cash in this bank.
No. Why does the bank need cash,
Is there a glitch in the
Carl?
Matrix or something going on at the moment? No cash in the bank?
So.
Anyway.
I think so.
Even the news is starting to recognise that we're living in a warped time where our institutions are shifting, where their priorities are becoming apparent, where their modalities are not making sense, where the stories they're telling us can no longer mask the reality of what's happening. Authority is centralising, and our ability to trade freely, speak freely, interact freely, even move around freely is being slowly inhibited. Always, of course, for some higher cause. As long as you trust these systems, there's nothing to worry about. Let's have a look at it in more detail. A petition to stop Australia from becoming a cashless society has gained more than 120,000 signatures as banks increasingly restrict customers' access to their money, which doesn't seem like what a bank should be doing. The meaning of words is continually changing. The function of institutions is changing. Compassion and kindness means that you just can't talk anymore. And now banks are an institution that prevent you from getting your money. In Australia, more than 1,600 bank branches permanently shut their doors between June 2017 and July 2022, while the remaining Big Four banks, Commonwealth, ANZ and NAB, have all opened cashless branches where customers are directed to ATMs for everyday banking. All Big Four banks have also introduced restrictions on customers sending large amounts to cryptocurrency exchanges and associated sites. You can't have your money, and neither can you set up any alternatives to these systems that we're determined to impose upon you. Authority is migrating unquestioned to new locations. When did your relationship with your bank become a relationship in which you were subjugated, where they say you can spend money here but you can't spend money there? Perhaps it's always been like this and it's just becoming more obvious and more plain. But really, the role of a bank is supposed to be a role of service. In fact, all of these institutions are supposed to be set up to be in your service. But isn't it becoming increasingly obvious that we're becoming secondary and subjugated, subordinate to the will of some not fully revealed but plainly present central authority? The bank can now take your money and control where you can spend it. You're not able to speak freely. Authoritarianism appears to be on the rise. I feel that new tyranny will not be in the form of demagogic figures that talk about nationalism, but in this creep of liberal bureaucracies that just shut down your ability to do anything without ever fully explaining it or allowing you to vote for it. Online, we don't have privacy and freedom. We feel that we're being continually observed, that our data is being packaged. The more that digital technology is advancing, the more ability to control us and observe us is garnered. Everywhere you look, freedom, privacy, autonomy, and personal authority are being eroded, often in exchange for ideas like convenience. When people talked about cashless societies advancing centralized authority, it was regarded, like most things, as a conspiracy theory. But now you can see how it will be used to restrict your ability to trade freely, to shut you down. Once that meshes with the kind of scrutiny we're subject to online, it's pretty easy to see how social credit scoring can be introduced, and your ability to trade, spend, move, and eat will be restricted according to the preferences of some invisible authoritative entity. A cashless society, necessary for CBDC proliferation, eradicates all scope for trade privacy. Consequently, a switch to this digital model hands unmitigated control over your personal funds to banks and government bodies. Yet the real sting in the tail lies in the unprecedented level of control CBDC implementation offers to the establishment. An intricate web of social engineering can be woven as the flow of money in society becomes tailored to specific interests. Consider a scenario where CBDCs have an expiration date, coercing consumers to accelerate their spending. Factor in the imposition of Chinese-style social credit scores creeping into the West, where unfavourable speech or belief systems incur financial penalties or account limitations. Australia's choice to pioneer the first wave of this cashless future is a clever strategic move from the establishment. Capitalising on the efficient enforcement of severe lockdown measures, the government seems ready to leverage the compliant temperament of Australians to pilot this currency overhaul. During the pandemic, when people said this will be used as a kind of piloting to introduce new social models and unprecedented levels of control, people said that was a conspiracy theory, that it was ridiculous. But haven't you noticed how frequently since then you've seen measures introduced that would have been unthinkable in the pre-pandemic era?